Welcome friends. Welcome to this video where I'm going to take you through the impact of COVID-19 on the field of data analytics. So, as you must be knowing that basically this pandemic has sort of disrupted the overall trend that data analytics was following before the pandemic. How? The data that has come in during this pandemic is not only short in size because most of the consumers or most of the businesses faced some disruption because of the lockdown. More importantly, the data itself has got no trend or pattern from the past, because this disruption was something that none of the businesses or rather the marketers were actually expecting. So whenever we are trying to analyze these kind of unforeseen circumstances in the course of a data analysis project, we have to break up the overall impact into two parts: the short-term impact and the long-term impact. As you can imagine, the short-term impact of COVID-19 pandemic was tremendous. Most of the businesses suffered losses that they had not anticipated at all. Many of the businesses were even closed down. However, are these trends going to remain in the future? Do you think that a business that is suffering today because of the lack of opening of say malls or lack of people visiting their retail stores still going to happen 5 years later? The answer is no. Business and economy evolves and they basically adapt themselves to the evolving market situation. So that is exactly where the long-term impact kicks in. Most of the businesses will slowly get adapted to the new normal, the new habit change. So in this video, we will see how exactly we can analyze that impact of COVID-19 on the life cycle of a data analysis project. So in this video, the example that I'm going to take is basically that of a sales and marketing example, where say a business is trying to see how exactly their revenue is going to be impacted in the next 5 years because of this COVID-19 phenomenon. So first of all, we need to understand that there can be two levels of impact. One is basically on the overall market, which mainly comprises of the different products that they're trying to sell across the different geographies. And the second can be basically an impact on the different channels through which they're selling their products, both the distribution channels as well as the sales channels. So let's not waste any time and go through a 5-point analysis through which you as a data scientist can actually analyze this COVID-19 impact on the project that you are currently doing. The first thing that we need to see in this kind of analysis is what are the input data sources that is needed. For analysis of this kind of a revenue-based future growth path, we need some sort of data from the company itself, which we commonly call as the retailer data. We need information regarding their revenue, regarding their profit, regarding their profit margins, regarding their distribution profiles, and even who are the key customers. When I'm talking about customers, what I mean to say is that what are the top supermarkets which are actually selling their products? What are the top e-commerce platforms through which their businesses used to have more momentum before the pandemic, because things have changed completely. Once we have this in-house information from our client or from the businesses, right, we need some syndicated data sources also to provide us information about the overall market situation. That is, we need some competitor analysis overview in the form of the brand information of the competitors as well as the overall company overview of the competitors. Now, once the data is in place, rather we know the input data, we need to understand what are the data types that are needed. The data types that we need in this case is the market size, first of all. Market size basically means the geography and the category level market size. Say for example, in India, we have observed that the beauty and personal care products has actually taken a huge hit because of the pandemic. So, say in a city of Mumbai, where most of the people are going out for work, the sale of lipsticks has gone down by nearly 10% due to this pandemic, because most of the people are no longer going out because of this lockdown or because of the fear of getting infected. So this is the market size information that we need. The next information that we need is basically the channel shares, or basically the distribution channel shares. And remember friends, it is extremely important to differentiate the overall channel situation into two parts, the retail part and the service part. Because my friends, retail and service did not behave in the same manner. Retail constitutes of all the channels which are not the service channels. Service channels basically means channels like bars, restaurants, or the different channels through which the physical product is sold in the form of a service line. Remaining all are retail channels. So retail channels constitutes of the e-commerce channel, the hypermarkets, the supermarkets, that is the large formats basically, then even the mom and pop shop. So within the retail also, not all the channels behaved in a similar manner. However, within the service, most of the channels actually suffered a huge loss. Restaurants, bars, and all these things were closed down due to the pandemic. Even vending machines or those type of automated services actually suffered because of lack of less people going out to use those services. So we need a channel profiling of our market as well, and ultimately we need the company share, because in many cases we have seen that although a company has lost some share in a particular product category, its overall market share has actually increased. Now can you understand why this actually happened? Because the market itself shrunk. Small players went out of business, and there has been situations where actually bigger players went on to use leverage the private label. So private labels are basically nothing but some bigger brands actually taking over a smaller brand and trying to sell those smaller brands through their own service line. So those type of strategical things were taken into consideration to fill up the gap that was left behind by the smaller players who went out of the business. So these are the data types that we need information about before we can go into the analysis. Now once we have the data in place, what we need to do is to be able to identify the COVID impact on the market. So once again friends, market is a separate thing currently and channel is a separate thing. We are studying those two things separately because channel has got a bigger impact on this COVID situation. So what did we observe during this COVID situation? In case of the market, we observed that most of the categories actually went through a dip during 2020, with obviously an exception of few like consumer healthcare or maybe the home care sort of products which you feel will help you keep less infected, and then a long run recovery for most of these markets. And we need a separate analytical model to be able to see what is the impact of these products when they are sold through service market. So as I was mentioning, in the service market, most of the categories went down irrespective of whether it is home care or consumer health, because the places which cater to these service channels were all closed down, or rather mostly closed down. Now this automatically brings up a question that when I'm talking about the analytical model, what are the different variables which must be fed in these type of analytical models? Broadly speaking, we can differentiate these variable factors into three main types. The short run impact, which is nothing but the impact of lockdown, or rather the length of lockdown. And remember friends, with the third wave coming in, this length of lockdown is no longer a continuous one. And that has been even more disruptive for the businesses, because many businesses have opened up in between two waves with the expectation that they will be able to recover their market share. But just when they were about to recover, another wave hit and all the hopes were lost once again. So the impact of lockdown or repeated lengths of lockdown in periodical form is an extremely important factor that must be taken into consideration. Then comes the medium run factors. These are basically the unlocking, or rather the recovery period, and also the income variation. So while most of the people had a lesser disposable income, not only because they lost their jobs, but also because of a sort of a protective or conservative mindset that if needed, maybe it will that the money will be better utilized for health insurance or for the healthcare purpose. This is not something that is going to remain continuously, or rather it is not going to stay there for a very long period of time. There will be a recovery, but that recovery is going to take a little bit of time. So that is why we are considering this to be a medium run impact. And ultimately comes the long run impact. That is the new normal or the new habits. So can you guess what is an example of these new habits? Yes, you have guessed it right. So the adaptation of e-commerce as a platform. Most of us after the pandemic have got so used to these online platforms delivering our food right to our home, or even delivering your medicine right to your home, that we are going to stick to this channel in a very dedicated manner in the days to come. And actually the businesses are also evolving. The direct to consumer segment of the e-commerce, then the pure play segment of the e-commerce, and even the brick and click segment of the e-commerce are having huge momentum in the upcoming period of recovery after the COVID is over. So once we have analyzed the market, the next component, as I've been trying to repeat over and over again, is basically try and see what exactly is the impact of this COVID on the channels, that is the retail channels and the service channels. And for that, what we can basically use is a sort of a country-wise expert input to form a scoring index. So that is another descriptive statistics, or rather, what shall I say, some scoring statistics method that can be commonly used in cases where the pattern is not at all similar to what it was before the pandemic, because this is a time of disruption. No one has seen these disruptive times previously. So rather than using some past data to determine what is exactly going to be the channel behavior, you can use a simple scoring method where you are scoring the different channels with respect to how exactly they will be impacted based on the pandemic. And through this scoring method, what we have found out is that the large formats, that is the supermarkets, the hypermarkets, the convenience stores, these type of formats are going to have a rapid dip, because most of them closed down during the lockdown. But there will be a gradual recovery. There will be a gradual recovery because people will once again be pulled towards those platforms, not only because they provide a wide variation of offerings in one go, but also because of the fact that they do have the monetary power to make the people feel attached to them through maybe some sanitization drives or through maybe some other sort of promotional campaigns. But what is not going to recover is actually the traditional form of stores, the mom and pop shops. They have gone down during the pandemic or during the lockdown, and there is almost no recovery that we can foresee once the pandemic is over. Their businesses are lost. And what about the service channels? Service channels, on the other hand, will go through a rapid dip. That's expected. But the recovery is also going to be extremely rapid. Because the moment the lockdown is over, all these bars, restaurants and all these different vending machines are going to open up, and people are going to go through them. Even if they're not going, there will be some takeaway options. So this service sector, while the impact has been pretty sharp because there has been almost 100% shutdown during the pandemic, its recovery is also going to be extremely sharp. This brings us to our last channel, that is e-commerce. And in this case, it was only boom, boom, boom. So there was no negative impact of this channel whatsoever, except some disruptions in the last mile delivery because of some restrictions in some containment zones. Many businesses have completely moved from their traditional business models to evolving into e-commerce channel. Many businesses have found their own direct to consumer e-commerce channel to cater to the customers who are ready to order through their own stores in the e-commerce platform. And obviously, brick and click and pure play are there. They were already there. They have also revamped and scaled up to cater to this growing demand of e-commerce. So now that we have done both the pillars of analysis, that is basically the market size analysis as well as the channel size, channel share analysis, we need to arrive at the conclusion. So the conclusion is that through these analyses, you are able to give your leadership or give to your client some future glide path into the business's future state. So it might be on some dimensions like basically the country dimension, some product dimension, some channel dimension. You might include the customer dimension, or you might go into micro segmentation. For example, you can go deeper into the geography dimension and go into some area wise dimension or indexing, some outlet level indexing. Those different things can be done. But what exactly is the output that we are going to give the business? So broadly thinking, we can basically divide our opportunity estimates into 4 main parts. The first part is basically where the business is growing alongside the market. So it is by the nature of the market that mostly the market is going to grow up because the population is increasing, the disposable income is also increasing in the longer future. So we are employing no other marketing measures, just we are depending on the market to grow, and my product is also growing with the market. The next thing that the marketers or the businesses can actually target is actually stealing share from the competitors. As I mentioned, due to this COVID, many of your big competitors has become very vulnerable because the business models that they were following are no longer relevant in today's changing environment. So use this opportunity to steal some share from your competitor. Venture into new white spaces. As I mentioned, there has been some new white spaces that has been left blank because the smaller businesses or some businesses has actually went out of their overall play. So there are new spaces where you can enter, and by new spaces I do not always mean the new product line or the new geography. Think about a fact where your business was completely reliant on offline channels, but now you are exploring the dark space, the previous dark space of moving into the e-commerce platform. So that in itself is a white space for you. And last but not the least, as a marketer, you must also take care of the private label opportunity, as I mentioned, because private labels are something which is gaining prominence with every passing day. So if you as a data analyst provide this overall solution to your client or to your leadership during the time of this pandemic, you can see that they can still get a directional figure of where they can actually try and focus in order to make sure that their business is moving in the right direction. So this is an example of how exactly analysis must be done during disruptive times, where trends are completely new and variation in the data is quite large. So friends, let's not waste your time. Put on your thinker's hat and try and see what kind of solution you can think about to tackle these difficult situations. So this is Pritam Banerjee signing off for now. Thank you. Happy learning.